Hello everybody, it is me, Mr. Vince, and I hope you all have an amazing day today. And I am finally back with another top 5 video. Today I'm going to count down my top 5 favorite seasonal textures in Roblox Jailbreak. I'm only including the textures that are part of the newer seasons, so I won't be taking any textures from the OG seasons, particularly OG Season 2. So in that case, I'm only going to be counting the ones from Season 1 beginnings to current Season 15 by the time this video gets released. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into number 5. We were traveling long towns just to find out and see. Alright, so at the number 5 spot is the drip texture. The drip texture was first introduced in Season 5 Let the Memes Begin back in August of 2021. If you wanted to get this texture, you had to reach level 8 in Season 5, and the reason why I like this texture is because of the meme itself. Back in 2021, we had a pretty good chunk of memes regarding some characters wearing some drip, and if you know what I mean, you'll probably understand. But despite this, I think the drip texture is pretty awesome. I really like the texture itself, and considering that this texture is not so great in value as well as demand, this is worth getting, and I like the texture overall. It just looks pretty funny, it's pretty iconic, and all it is just a texture with a lot of jailbreak with a period on the texture itself. And I think that looks pretty good. Overall, this texture is not too bad, and I do recommend getting it. So let's go ahead and move on to number 4. We were traveling long towns just to find out. So at the number 4 spot is the Galactic carbon texture. This one is really nice looking. This texture was introduced in Season 2, and this one is alright. It is a decent texture, and it looks pretty good. I like the color blue, so this texture does make a bit of sense. If you wanted to get this texture, you had to reach level 8 in Season 2, and at least this one wasn't a Season Pass exclusive, unlike the Snowstorm texture from Season 1 The Beginnings. I like the design of the texture, and it just looks pretty good. While it is not my favorite, I really like the texture design, and it feels kind of nostalgic looking back. And I'm not going to lie, I think it was pretty crazy that we had Season 2 2 years ago at this point. Overall, this is a nice texture, and just like the drip texture, this texture doesn't have as much value nor demand, so this texture is also worth getting, and I think it looks pretty good. Once again, it's not my absolute favorite, but this one should be part of the list. But let's go ahead and move on to number 3. We were traveling long towns just to find out and see. Alright, so at the number 3 spot is the Snowstorm texture. This texture was added in Season 1 The Beginnings, and the reason why I like this texture is because of the design itself as well as the color scheme that was used on this texture. If you wanted to get this texture, you had to reach level 5 with the Season Pass in Season 1 New Beginnings. This texture overall does look really nice, and the only downside is that it's extremely bright due to the bright colors that have been used on this texture. Even then, this is the first Seasonal Pass exclusive texture, but yeah, once again, this was a Season Pass exclusive, so you did need the Season Pass to get the Snowstorm texture, as long as you were able to hit level 5 in Season 1 The Beginnings. But let's go ahead and move on to number 2. We were traveling long towns just to find out and see. Alright, so coming at the number 2 spot is the flaming texture. I think this texture is really nice looking, and while it may not look like a bluish texture, I think this texture looks really nice. This texture was added in Season 6, and I just like the texture itself. It's very unique from the others, and I prefer this over the OG fire texture that we got. If you wanted to get this texture, you had to be part of the top 5% in Season 6, which was also the first season to include bonus rewards. Overall, this is a very nice texture, and is it worth getting? Absolutely. I would rather use this over many textures, and I just like the texture overall. But now I'm going to talk about some honorable mentions. We were traveling long towns just to find out and see. Alright, so for one of the honorable mentions I'm going to be talking about is the golf texture. The golf texture was added in Season 6 as well, and if you wanted to get it, you had to be part of the top 10% as part of Season 6 to get the texture. I like this texture due to the color scheme as well as the layout of the texture itself. I really like the texture, and I just think this texture fits well with many vehicles like the Pro 08, the Torero, the Bugatti Chiron, the Veyron, the Torpedo, etc. This is a very nice and fashionable texture, and I think this texture is worth getting. And I was lucky enough to get the texture on this account, so that's good. For the other honorable mention I'm going to talk about is the Winter Camo texture. This texture was added in Season 7, and you had to be part of the top 1% to get this texture. Yep, you literally had to be part of the top 1%. And even then, this texture is pretty cheap, so it's not that hard to get in trading. The demand is pretty bad, and not a lot of people want this texture. This is my favorite camo texture of the 3 that we got in Jailbreak. The 3 we got are the regular camo, which is purchasable in the garage, this texture, the winter camo, and the camo radar texture that we got in Season 12, which is a level 8 reward as part of the season. This is my favorite because it's very unique from the other 3. It's not just green, but it also includes pink, purple, white, and blue, and I just like this texture a lot. But now it's time to talk about number 1. We were traveling There is no doubt this is my absolute favorite texture. And even if we got the newer seasons like Season 10, 11, 12, etc., this is still going to be hands down my favorite seasonal texture of all time. But coming in at the number 1 spot is the Black Ice texture. This texture was added in Season 7 Ice Cold, and if you wanted to get it, you had to reach level 8. This texture is really cool, and the reason I like it a lot is because of the design itself, as well as the color scheme. The Black Ice texture mainly consists of shades of black and a bit of blue, which I think is really, really cool. And if you look at the texture, it looks pretty identical to the armor texture, except with some realism applied to it. This is a really nice looking texture, and I'm sure a lot of you will like this texture as well. I think overall this is a really nice texture, and it is very cheap too, and you don't have to overpay for this texture. As a matter of fact, this is such a great texture, and I'm sure a lot of you will agree. This is one of my favorite seasonal textures, and I still love this texture up to this day, despite the newer textures releasing. Now, there were a couple of textures that I did not mention that were also good, like the Manga texture, the Crimson Racer texture, and the Fire texture too, not to be confused with the Flaming texture. So, honestly, I like the textures that we got in Jailbreak. Although Maplestick no longer works on textures as he usually works on other stuff, I like the textures that we have in Jailbreak. Whether they're new or not, these textures are really unique, and they play a pretty big role in Jailbreak. But with that being said, there are so many good textures out there, and I'm sure a lot of you will agree. That doesn't mean Checker is the best texture. Checker may be the most valuable, but it's not necessarily the best looking texture. Now, it is not always best that you look for the best valued textures, but you should look for ones that look best for you. These textures are really nice, and they may not be the most valuable, but the textures themselves are really nice. Value does not really mean much to you in terms of looks and design. The textures that look creative to you are the ones that you should use instead of the ones that are valuable. So that doesn't mean you could just use the Checker texture, unless if you really like it, that is. You can use something like the Manga texture, or the Blue Pixel texture, or even the Hot Dog texture if you wanted to. Overall, I really like the textures that we got, and I'm sure a lot of you will agree. But anyway, that is my top 5 video. If you guys have enjoyed, please feel free to leave a like, and if you're new to the channel, please feel free to subscribe as well. I really do appreciate you guys, and yeah. Now with that being said, I will hit level 10 tomorrow, so please stay tuned for the live stream that I will make tomorrow. But as always, my name is Mr. Vince. I hope you all have an amazing day today, and I'll see you guys in the next video.